So this is going to be my second video lecture where I break down the references and symbols frame by frame that I use in my videos from the series that I like to call mind mirrors. So if you don't know, mind mirrors are basically like an art form that I probably didn't invent, but it's just like the quickest name that I came up with. It's like a visual media type art where I attempt to express certain images or experiences that I have when listening to certain songs or contemplating certain subjects. So this video is going to be on a vision of what is to come, the very first mind mirror I ever made for this channel back in 2020. As this summer sees record-breaking ocean temperatures, AMOC beginning to slow and possibly collapse, and more wildfires devastating this time Hawaii, I feel like this breakdown is very on point and on theme, if you will. So this specific mind mirror is a mirroring of the very vivid dreams that I kept having at the beginning of 2020 about fires, wildfires, ominous lunar eclipses, and this like really abstract, atmospheric, smoky landscapes. The video is going to be broken down into 3 parts, showing the climate catastrophe affecting first the natural world, then individual humans, and finally society and civilization as a whole. So starting right away, as the video opens, immediately the title portrays an obvious biblical Armageddon type theme. Y'all know I love to use philosophical or religious motifs to convey significance and drama, and I think the subject of climate collapse is definitely perfect for that. So, when looking at the Bible, the book of Revelation and verses from the book of Peter describe the world and even stars melting as the earth is consumed by fire. At the time I made this back in 2020, it really did look like that was happening as wildfires broke records around the world. San Francisco was plunged into blood orange darkness, and billions of animals died in the Australian wildfires. So, like I said earlier, this was my first mind mirror, so I was a bit lazy when making this because literally the first seconds are just re-uploading a part from a video from MelodySheep. So MelodySheep is actually a music producer who combines dramatic electronic soundtracks with scientific or educational content. This particular sample was from a video called Humanity's Epoch, Anthropocene. I'll definitely link his channel and this specific video in my description, and I really love MelodySheep. You should definitely check him out, especially if you love science, if you love art, if you love music, because he really merges like all of that together. So for anyone that doesn't know, the Anthropocene is a proposed modern geologic epoch of the earth, with the previous period being the Holocene, which marked the end of the last glacial maximum with the Holocene retreat. The Anthropocene is thought to have begun after the year 1950, when human influence on the planet began overriding the impact of natural processes on geology, climate, and ecosystems on a global scale. This part of the video is obviously the beginning, but it was intended to be liminal in nature, showing the transition from humanity's previous position as a small player in the world like we have been for most of our history, to now having the largest and most impactful influence on it. As the video begins, we hear multiple news anchors talking about biblical-like destruction from natural disasters and wildfires, while seeing visuals of the mass consumption of the natural world, from fishing and agriculture to deforestation and the extraction of natural resources like oil. And once this part ends, we move to something called boiling frog syndrome. So the premises of this type of epilogue is basically this. If a frog is immediately put into boiling water, it will obviously jump out to save itself. The rate of change from one state to the next is so extreme that there is this immediate reaction. However, if a frog is placed in room temperature water and is incrementally heated up, its body temperature will adjust and it will not notice eventually dying. For context, the frog was not harmed in this video. I made sure I checked the description, everything. And this scenario is more about the metaphorical lesson and not an actual scientific truth. So if a frog was incrementally heated up, it would eventually notice and jump out. And if a frog was put into boiling water, it would immediately die. It wouldn't have time to jump out of it. So it's just more for the metaphor. So like I just said, this story is often used as a metaphor for the inability or unwillingness of people to react or to be aware of sinister threats that arise gradually rather than suddenly. One of the biggest examples that this type of metaphor is used for is climate change. Even though the climate is changing at an extremely rapid pace relative to geologic timescales, for humans, we are so adaptive that we don't notice until it's too late. Unless you pay attention to peer-reviewed scientific evidence, of course. So this clip dramatically ends with a scene from the movie Knowing from 2009 starring Nicolas Cage. This movie is about a man who finds a note left in a time capsule from his son's school, which contains what seems to be a bunch of random numbers. However, these numbers are actually dates and places of future disasters leading all the way up to the end of the world when a solar flare decimates and destroys the earth. This specific scene was from a part in the movie movie where these strange male figures show Nick's son a warning through a vision outside his window of what is going to happen to the planet. These strange men are actually alien beings that have come to warn humanity and save certain children around the world and bring them to repopulate a new planet, which we see at the end of the movie. This scene from the movie really looks like the wildfire to end all wildfires, encompassing the entire frame of view and landscape. This scene really also reminded me of the dreams I had and is symbolically supposed to represent the destruction of the natural world as we see animals fleeing and burning up. As all this plays out visually, in the background, the soundtrack from Terminator 2 Judgment Day called Sarah's Dream plays while church bells ominously ring. The soundtrack is extremely dramatic, obviously, and feels to me as if anxiety and panic were transformed or manifested into sound. The track's vocals remind me of the dramatic techniques from Catholic chants in music, and the fact the movie the soundtrack is from is called Judgment Day really ties everything together and the theme of the video perfectly. Speaking of Terminator, this leads to the next scene, which is from that same movie and depicts what is known as Sarah's dream. So Sarah's dream was a scene where, in a dream, Sarah attempts to warn another version of herself on a playground that something horrible is going to happen, to no avail. A nuke then explodes over Los Angeles, casting a blinding light as the city is decimated, and everyone, including Sarah, immediately ignites into flames as they fall to the ground and try to shield their children. The scene ends as Sarah wails in agony and pain as she burns until the shockwave hits her, blasting all the organic matter off her bones, leaving only a skeleton. This part of the dream terrifies her, shocking her awake. So this scene is actually not supposed to reference the original nuclear content from the movie, but it's still sticking to the theme of runaway climate change. The possibility of us reaching points of no return or tipping points where, for instance, methane begins releasing, which is a much more potent greenhouse gas. It can cause warming dramatically quicker and faster, or ocean ecosystems collapsing could dramatically increase the amount of warming that we are already predicted to see, which could lead to unimaginable disaster movie-like scenarios. This scene is representative of a dramatized scenario like that, where the earth has become so hot and unrecognizable that wildfire conditions become temporarily permanent as heat waves push temperatures to something like 150 to 200 degrees Fahrenheit or 65 to 93 degrees Celsius. While the first scene focuses on nature and the environment, this scene is supposed to represent the impact on humanity and the individual. Innocent families and children are instantaneously ignited and agonizingly suffer, just as the animals shown previously, with seemingly no form of escape. The last and final clip shows a scene from the movie Mother with Jennifer Lawrence. This movie was a commentary on human civilization and our treatment of the environment using biblical motifs and stories. The movie showed humanity's biblical beginnings to the dystopian, chaotic present day. Jennifer Lawrence is Mother Nature personified, and the house that she's working on is the earth and the environment. Her husband, the writer, is God, and the masses of arrogant, destructive people represent humanity and society as a whole. The writer shows unconditional acceptance and forgiveness for humanity despite its destructive behavior coming at the expense of Mother or the environment. This leads Mother to, towards the end of the movie, go to the basement and damage what looks to be propane or oil tank and light it on fire, destroying the house or the earth and all the people or civilization within it. There are so many different interpretations of this movie and its intended message, but for me, it conveys how we can only take and destroy so much from the world around us before it too takes and destroys us. So first we were shown the destruction of the environment, then the suffering of individuals and humanity, and like the movie Mother, this last section represents the total annihilation of human society and civilization as a whole or altogether. This scene closes as we see the house explode and the nature around the house simultaneously ignite, leading quickly all the way up to the viewer before the screen dramatically cuts to black. This very small detail of the screen quickly turning black is supposed to show how this is a dream and that this is the climax, the boiling point of emotion and anxiety that would shock the observer awake. So ever since I was young, like preschool age, I was obsessed with weather, natural disasters, and the natural world, and I would religiously watch things like the Weather Channel. I can remember watching Hurricane Katrina and documentaries dramatizing global warming and what we might have to live through, but the common narrative at the time, like this was like 2004, 2005, was that it would most likely be somewhere in the distant future if it happened at all. As I've gotten older, I'm constantly reminded that everything I used to see predicted is not only happening, but is happening much quicker than previously thought. What used to be a far off, intriguing, interesting scenario now is a constant anxiety inducing existential threat that gets worse and worse as each year passes. This video was supposed to be as alarmist as possible, as many climate scientists around the world confirm we may have underestimated the pace and impact of this change. We are truly in uncharted waters, and there's never been something like this that we have gone through. So I did want to end this on a bit of a positive note, because I think a lot of people forget that even though you're being alarmist, it doesn't mean it's doom and gloom, and alarmism is needed in this moment. We should be terrified, we should be freaking out. However, that does not mean that there's no hope. So the way I see it, not only do we have the ability and technology to halt our destruction, but I do believe we can completely reverse it. I envision a future where historians look back at the 2020s and they give it a title like something like The Great Reckoning. This reckoning will not just be of the climate catastrophe, but also of economic, political, and technological shift. It will be known as a decade where everything changes and rapidly moves away from the ways and mindsets of the past. Like I said, I think this decade's going to be very bumpy and scary, but I also think it's necessary, and it will force us to collectively, not partially, take action. As things like fusion and clean energy become more efficient and technology continues exponentially advancing, I envision a future where we finally leave fossil fuels behind and develop technologies that can efficiently and quickly reduce the levels of carbon in the atmosphere and restore the environment. I see the latter half of this century and the 22nd century as historians calling it something like, I don't know, like the Great Cleanup, where after a series of devastating worldwide natural disasters, maybe ecosystem collapses, humanity moves rapidly and quickly to restore the natural world in conditions that existed pre-industrial revolution. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I'm going to try to be uploading, like, I have literally other videos like this, mind mirrors, already made, but I just have to upload them, and then I have to like write the little video lecture or whatever explaining it all. So yeah, I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope you have a very good day.